This butter is in your kitchen right now, and what we discovered about Canada's butter industry will change how you shop forever. A nationwide scandal they tried to hide, metal contamination, Listeria outbreaks, a price-fixing system that costs Canadian families $500 extra per year. We investigated 8 of Canada's most popular butter brands. We examined CFIA recall databases. We analyzed the supply management system. We uncovered a scandal that went viral, then disappeared. What we found is disturbing. These are the butter brands Canadians need to understand. And by the end, you'll know which butter is actually worth buying. Let's expose the truth. Let's start with something most Canadians have forgotten. In early 2021, Canadians noticed something strange. Butter wasn't spreading. Even at room temperature, butter remained rock solid, unusable, like trying to spread cold wax or plastic. Thousands complained online across every platform. Why won't my butter spread anymore? Is anyone else's butter like concrete? I left it out for hours and it's still hard. I thought my fridge was broken. The complaints went viral. #Buttergate trended nationally on Twitter, Facebook, and Reddit. Thousands of posts, hundreds of thousands of interactions. But the dairy industry stayed completely silent. No press releases, no statements, no explanations, nothing. CBC's Marketplace and The National decided to investigate. They partnered with Dr. Alejandro Marangoni, a food science professor at the University of Guelph, specializing in fats and oils research. They tested 17 different Ontario butter brands. They used penetrometer testing to measure firmness scientifically. They analyzed palmitic acid content in controlled laboratory conditions. The findings? Canadian butter had become significantly harder compared to historical samples from previous years. The likely culprit? Palmitic acid supplements fed to dairy cows. Palmitic acid is a fatty acid supplement extracted from palm oil. It's been fed to Canadian dairy cows since at least the 1990s to increase milk production and butterfat content. Here's why it matters. Under Canada's dairy quota system, farmers get paid more for higher butterfat milk. Higher butterfat equals higher quota value equals more money per liter. It's a direct economic incentive. But in recent years between 2015 to 2020, usage increased dramatically. More farmers adopted palmitic acid supplements in higher quantities to maximize their quota returns. The result? Milk with higher palmitic acid content throughout the Canadian food supply. This produces harder, waxy butter that won't spread at room temperature. The chemistry is simple. Palmitic acid has a higher melting point than other milk fats. More palmitic acid equals harder butter that requires higher temperatures to soften. The dairy industry's response? Dairy farmers of Canada denied any systemic problem existed. They claimed butter hardness varies naturally with seasons, cow diet, and feed composition. But consumers knew better. They knew what they were experiencing. Thousands of Canadians reported the exact same problem across every major brand, across all provinces from BC to Newfoundland, in every season, summer, winter, spring, fall. The pattern was undeniable. Dairy farmers of Canada eventually acknowledged they were looking into it. They formed a working group. They promised to investigate consumer concerns. But changes were partially implemented if they wanted to. No new regulations. No requirement to disclose palmitic acid supplementation levels on packaging. No fines. No accountability. No fixes. The butter you're buying in 2025 might still have this exact same issue. Because nothing was actually fixed. The dairy industry simply waited for the media cycle to move on, for consumer outrage to fade, for people to forget. And it worked. By spring 2021, people stopped talking about it. The news moved to other stories. Life continued. But the problem? Still there. Still in your fridge. Still impossible to spread on morning toast. And Buttergate is just the beginning of what's wrong with Canada's butter industry. Let's take a deeper look at the brands themselves. Number 8. Saputo Salted Butter, Canada's largest dairy processor, a name millions of Canadians have trusted for generations. But here's what happened in November 2024, just months ago. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency issued an urgent recall. Saputo brand salted butter, multiple production codes. The reason? Pieces of metal. That's right, Metal, sharp metal fragments, in butter, distributed across Quebec, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick. But here's the disturbing timeline. Check this out. The metal came from contaminated Sifto brand salt supplied by Compass Minerals, used in Saputo's butter production. Compass Minerals detected metal contamination in mid-October 2024. October 25th, they initiated a Class 2 recall of contaminated salt. November 8th, expanded to full market withdrawal. All salt manufactured between September 18th and November 6th. Septembri 18, contamination begins. October 25th, first recall. November 8th, full withdrawal. November 21st, Saputo butter recall. That's nearly 2 months, 64 days of contaminated salt in the food supply. Factory to distributors, to Saputo, to stores, to your home. And Saputo used that contaminated salt to make butter. Butter Canadian families purchased and consumed. The CFIA classified this as Class 2, may cause temporary adverse health effects. Metal pieces can cause cuts in mouth or throat, choking hazards, internal injuries if swallowed, dental damage, emergency room visits. Critical question: how many Canadians consumed this before the recall? Over 2 months on shelves before consumers were warned. And most Canadians never heard about it. No major news coverage, no headlines. Just the usual notice on a CFIA's website most people never check. Now let's look at Saputo as a corporation. Annual revenue, 15+ billion Canadian dollars. Employees, 17,000 plus worldwide. Market share, 30% of Canada's milk supply. This is a massive operation with quality control systems, food safety protocols, and regulatory oversight. But contaminated salt still made it through for 2 months, and Canadian families still consumed it. Brand number 7. Actually, 3 brands: Baxter, Dairyland, Armstrong. Here's what most Canadians don't know. All owned by Saputo. Same parent company, same facilities, same contaminated salt in November 2024. The metal contamination didn't just affect Saputo brand. It affected all 3. Issued recalls the same day, because they're made in the same facilities. Saputo owns dozens of brands: Saputo, Baxter, Dairyland, Nielsen, Armstrong, Stella, Frigo, Milk To Go, Scotsburn. And they control 30% of Canada's dairy market. You think you're choosing between brands. You're choosing between products from the same company. And here's why this matters. Saputo, $8.49. Baxter, $8.99. Armstrong, $8.29. Different prices, different packaging, same facility, same milk, same processes. When contamination happens, it affects multiple brands simultaneously. But corporate consolidation isn't the only problem. The next brand is voted most trusted, but it's owned by foreign interests with a contamination history. And before we continue, subscribe and click like. Let's continue. Number 6. Lactalis, Canada's top-performing butter brand, consistently voted most trusted butter brand. Canadians pay $9.49 for 454 grams, the highest price on the shelf. But here's what they don't tell you. Lactalis is owned by Groupe Lactalis, a French multinational corporation. Groupe Lactalis is the world's largest dairy company. Operations in 94 countries, 80,000 plus employees worldwide, 28.9 billion euros annual revenue, 43 billion Canadian dollars. Processes 22 billion liters of milk annually. In Canada, Lactalis owns Lactantia, Beatrice, Black Diamond, Balderson, Cracker Barrel, Astro, Iogo, and dozens more. They operate 19 facilities across Canada, employing 4,000 plus Canadians. But the profits flow to France, to French shareholders, to European parent company interests. The disconnect is staggering. Marketing emphasizes Canadian heritage, ownership, French, control, French, profits, France. And here's what matters. In 2017, Lactalis baby formula was contaminated with salmonella in France. 38 babies sickened. Criminal charges followed. The Canadian operation is separate. but it raises questions about corporate culture around food safety. The trust you're paying $9.49 for, built on the illusion of Canadian ownership. Numbers 5 and 4. Beatrice and Black Diamond. Both owned by Lactalis, the same French multinational. Here's where it gets interesting. Lactantia, $9.49, premium. Black Diamond, $9.29, quality. Beatrice, $8.99, value. 3 brands, 3 prices, 1 corporation. This is textbook market segmentation. Lactalis captures consumers at every price point. But the reality? Made in the same facilities, perhaps same production lines, same milk sources. Canadian regulations require all butter to be minimum 80% butter fat. Lactantia, 80% butter fat, cream, salt. Black Diamond, 80% butter fat, cream, salt. Beatrice, 80% butter fat, cream, salt. They're functionally identical. You're paying $26 per year extra for Lactantia's marketing budget, not better butter. Before we continue, you need to understand something critical. The butter industry isn't a free market. It's a controlled, government-managed league. It's called supply management, production quotas, government price floors, 300% import tariffs. The Canadian Dairy Commission sets a support price for butter. In May 2024, butter costs $10.35 per kilogram. Compare this to February 2023, $10.22 per kilogram. That's a 3.3% increase in 2 years. It only goes up. This creates an artificial floor. Butter cannot fall below this price. According to the OECD, Canadian butter prices have been significantly higher than world prices for decades. Research shows Canadian families pay an extra $500 per year for dairy products. And here's the worst part. Canada imposes tariffs approaching 300% on imported butter. Foreign butter is taxed so heavily it can't compete. US butter, approximately $5.50. Canadian butter, approximately $9.49. Not because of quality, because the system guarantees high prices. And most Canadians have no idea. Numbers 3 and 2, President's Choice and No Name, both owned by Loblaws. And here's the truth. Loblaws doesn't make butter. They contract with Saputo, Agropur, or Lactalis to produce store brands. The butter comes from the same facilities making name brands. Lactantia, 80% butterfat, cream, salt. PC, 80% butterfat, cream, salt. No Name, 80% butterfat, cream, salt. They're absolutely identical. Lactantia, $9.49. President's Choice, $7.99. No Name, $5.99. Why the difference? Branding and marketing. Lactantia pays for TV ads, digital campaigns, most trusted awards, premium packaging. PC pays for moderate packaging and positioning. No Name pays for nothing. Basic yellow package, 0 advertising. If you buy 1 package per week, Lactantia, $493.48 per year. No Name, $311.48 per year. You save $182 per year switching to No Name for identical butter. But here's the deeper issue. During 2023 to 2024 grocery inflation crisis, Loblaws posted record profits. In Q3 of 2024, they made $777 million profit. Their annual revenue was $59+ billion. They profit on both ends, store brands and shelf fees from name brands. If Loblaws can sell butter for $5.99 and still profit, what does that tell you about actual production costs? Estimated costs: milk/cream, $2. Processing, $1. Packaging, 50 cents. Distribution, 75 cents. At $9.49, that's double the production cost. And finally, brand number 1. Actually, 2 again. Natrel and Gay Lea, both marketed as Canadian cooperatives, farmer-owned, better for Canadian agriculture. Canadians pay $8.99 to $9.49 believing they're supporting local farmers. But here's the reality. Natrel is owned by Agropur Cooperative. Here are the facts about AgroPur. $5.8 billion annual revenue, 3,000 plus dairy farmer members, controls 53% of Quebec's milk market, controls 30% of Ontario's market. That's not a small cooperative. That's massive market concentration. They're one of 3 corporations controlling 80% of Canada's dairy processing. And here's what cooperative really means. The farmer members who own these cooperatives own dairy quota. In 2017, total Canadian dairy quota value, $36.9 billion. That quota is an asset. The cooperative structure benefits quota holders by guaranteeing high prices through supply management. Whether it's a French corporation or Canadian cooperative, the result is identical. Lactalis brands costs $9.49 and benefits from supply management. AgroPur, the Canadian co-op, costs between $8.99 to $9.49 and benefits from supply management. The structure is different, the prices are the same. Canadian consumers pay premium either way. 8 brands, controlled by 3 massive corporations. Buttergate, ignored and unresolved. The industry waited for you to forget. Metal contamination in November 2024. 2 months of contaminated butter before recall. A supply management system with 300% import tariffs protecting corporate profits. Record corporate profits during Canada's worst inflation crisis in decades. $500 extra per family per year. Money taken directly from your grocery budget. This is Canada's butter industry. So which butter should you actually buy? If you're on a budget, no name or PC store brands. Identical 80% butterfat to premium brands at 40% lower cost. Made in the same facilities. If you value organic meadow, or certified organic options. Understand you're paying for organic farming practices and environmental standards, not dramatically better butter quality. If buying premium brands, understand you're paying $26 to $50 extra per year purely for marketing and packaging, not better quality butter. But here's the most important point that affects every Canadian. Until Canada reforms the supply management system, you'll keep paying artificially inflated prices regardless of which brand you choose. The 300% import tariffs that block competition, the production quotas that restrict supply, the government support prices that create artificial price floors. These 3 mechanisms guarantee high prices across every single brand on the shelf. The brand choice is an illusion. The system is designed to extract maximum profit from Canadian consumers. 8 brands, 3 corporations, 1 government, multiple scandals. Most Canadians have no idea. If butter operates like this, what about milk, eggs, chicken? Supply management controls all of them. We're investigating. What we find will disturb you. Subscribe for the next investigation. Turn on notifications. Stay informed, stay aware, shop smart, and think twice before you pay $9.49 for butter. Thanks for watching.